right, let's talk about some quick tips and tricks for basic tube amp operation. I have two amps behind me, the 68 Custom Deluxe Reverb and an Anniversary Blues Junior. And I also, before we go any further, I have some pedals on the floor that I might use later, and I have this really cool ABY Fender switch as well. All right, so let's talk about master volume versus non-master volume. And that simply refers to the volume knobs on your amplifier. On the Deluxe Reverb and a lot of other vintage or vintage reissue amps, it's simply one volume. And then to get the tube saturation, you have to just crank up the volume or keep it lower for a clean tone. On an amp like the Blues Junior, you have a volume, which is basically your preamp gain. So that's your overall gain that will ultimately give you drive and distortion. And then a master volume that controls the overall output or level of the amplifiers. All right, let's first take a look at the Deluxe Reverb. I'm set on 2 currently here, so it's going to be clean. I can go to about 3 maybe. It's just, I don't know if you can hear that, but it's just starting to get to that kind of edge of breakup. And if I go to 4, depending on how I dig in on the guitar lightly, but like if I dig in, and of course, if I crank it all the way, or almost all the way, and one tip would be to, as you increase the level of your non-master volume amp, you want to back off on the bass a little bit because you're now overpowering and saturating the whole circuit. So you want to kind of back off on the bass so you don't get too much of a flubby low end. So here's about 6.5. All right, so now you can hear it breaking up. It's very full and sounds quite wonderful. So let's back that off. Let's go to the Blues Junior. So right now I have volume which is basically the preamp. I have that low and the master low, so we should get a nice kind of clean sound. So as I increase the volume here, you're going to hear a little bit more dirt, a little bit more. And of course, with the master volume, I can take that even louder, which you can't probably hear that on the camera, but in the room, it's much louder. But if you wanted to go at like bedroom level, you're rehearsing or recording at home, and you don't want to disturb the neighbors, so you can take the master like kind of way down, crank up the pre, so there you can hear the gain, and it's not ear-shattering, which is really cool. But from there, I want to show, the reason I have the pedals hooked up here, I have some drives and some delay and reverb. So again, to take it even further, so say you're at home, you're recording, you're maxed out on the gain, but you want to take it to the next level. So, let's hit an overdrive. And I have the gain on the overdrive set fairly low, but the volume is higher, so I'm pushing the front end of the amp. So now with the volume low, fairly clean, I can crank up the volume on the guitar, more gain, and then I can hit even additional gain off the floor here. All right, let's go back to the Deluxe Reverb. Let me show you that amp cranked up, and then I'll add the gain from the overdrive pedal on the floor here. Let's go to about 6. I'm going to back off of the bass a little bit more. Let's hear that. And add in the overdrive pedal. And while I have the pedals here in the AB switch, one really cool thing with this Custom Deluxe Reverb, because both channels are sharing the reverb and trem, the way this amp is designed, you can literally use an ABY switch, so either channel or both together. So I now have the outputs from the Fender ABY pedal going into both channels of the amplifier. So that way you can set up one channel to be a little bit darker, one a little bit brighter, one a little bit louder, one a little bit quieter. So right now I just have the vintage to be a little bit brighter and then the custom channel a little darker. So I think we can hear that. This is, so I'll just switch between the two. Hopefully you could hear that. One's a little bit softer and more mellow, the other one's a little bit brighter. But you can also use both together to combine the two channels. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about attenuation. You may have heard that term in the amp world. An attenuator is a device that sits between the amplifier and the speaker. And what that does, it allows you to crank the amp up on the front end, get that sweet spot, that natural distortion, but then you can control the overall volume of the amplifier. So if you're doing late night recordings at home and you don't want to wake up the neighbors, you can get it at a bedroom level, but still get that kind of sweet spot. And in a lot of cases, manufacturers make these units with a line out, so you can actually record directly into your DAW without having to mic the amplifier. So it's a nice thing you might want to explore if you're looking for a solution for a smaller space or a quiet space that'll allow you to get really close to what the amp might sound like cranked, but you're able to control the volume.